You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast hosted by Matt Franks and Zach Bechtold. We hope you enjoy this week's show, and you can find out more about us by going online at beardedtheologians.com, where you can pick up a few t-shirts, listen to a few old episodes, and find ways that you can connect with us. Thank you for listening. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold. And today we have a very special guest on the podcast, one that we've been excited about for a while to share with you all. We want to welcome Bishop Kristin Stoneking with us, who is our bishop of the Mountain Sky Conference. Welcome, Bishop.
Yeah, great. It's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation. I am a fan of Bearded Theologians since visiting Bozeman UMC last September upon arrival. And so it's great to get to be in conversation with you guys. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Well, we are humbled and thankful that you are sharing some time with us and shamelessly let me give you stickers and promotional items when you came to Bozeman. My wife got on to me and she said, "You cannot give Bishop a sticker." And I was like, I'm doing it.
Yes. No, I need more, actually. I had it on my water bottle and it got washed off in the washing machine. So yeah. Next time.
We'll get you some more. We have plenty.
Okay.
Well, Bishop, thanks for being on. Knowing that not all of our listeners know you or have got to spend any time with you, would you tell us a little bit about yourself? You know, kind of the who you are, where you're from, type of things.
Well, thank you. I'm currently serving as bishop of the Mountain Sky Conference. So our conference here. I am a lifelong United Methodist, and it is part of the air that I breathe. I'm grateful that my story includes one of the early deaconesses. My grandmother was an early deaconess. She went to what's now St. Paul School of Theology before it was even called St. Paul. It was a national Christian women's teaching college, and she would have been ordained had that been an option for women at that time. So she did the next best thing. She became a deaconess and she was a Christian educator. And both of her kids, my dad and my aunt, became ordained. My dad was an elder. My aunt is a deacon. And all of this took place in the Oklahoma conference. So Matt, connection. Yeah. Yes. My aunt's still a deacon there, and my dad moved to the Kansas East Conference when he graduated from seminary. So that's where I grew up, is in Kansas. And so I hail from the Midwest. And most of my ministry vocation, though, has been in Northern California. So focused on local churches and extension ministry. I did campus ministry for several years in Northern California, where we built a multi-faith intentional community for 42 students, which is one of the highlights of my ministry, the experience of bringing together a broad community to create a sustainable ministry, but also a force for peace and justice in a community and beyond, especially at a formational moment that college is. That was a great experience. And I've done other ministries too. I've served other local churches in Northern California. I served as the National Executive Director of Fellowship of Reconciliation, an international peace and justice organization that's also interfaith. So my experience, my background, I've served as a district superintendent, and I've also taught at the seminary level. So my background is diverse, and a lot of bishops come through a more traditional path to the episcopacy of serving in local churches, and then maybe being a district superintendent or a conference superintendent of some sort, and then being elected bishop. And I bring maybe a slightly different background that has some diversity of experience, which I actually think we need at this moment because we are in a context that is not exactly traditional church. And so if we're going to reach people in new ways, we need to be creative and think about the ways that people can hear the message that we have to give, the good news, in new ways and with new language.
I love that, Bishop. I have a campus ministry background as well. I was Wesley Foundation director at New Mexico State for a few years. Yeah, and
Neat,
so
right?
I could talk about that all day. Some of the
Right.
most fun I've had in ministry, and really, I dig back into often of that's not a traditional setting, and you have to be creative, and you have to think outside of the box, and you have to do it differently. And you get people from all over the place, all over the theological spectrum, from all over the world. And it was such a fun ministry to be a part of. Exhausting, but a really fun ministry to be a part of.
Exactly.
And I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I think a great picture of where the church is headed.
So true. I mean, you arrive on campus and there's nothing that suggests to anyone that you're working with that you have any authority. There's no typical sanctuary that you're working out of. There's no Sunday morning worship that people can show up to usually. And so you've got to develop a language that works in the setting, and that's the language that often works in the world.
Yeah,
So, yeah, good experience.
it is.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely had a fun time. Served I've served as chair as one Wesley board and then served as the pastor connected to a Wesley board and then was connected to a Wesley when I was an associate pastor as part of my like young adult ministry. So I have a pretty like really high view of like seeing how it works from afar of Wesley Foundations, and I've always loved and appreciated Wesley Foundations and the work that they do because
Yeah.
it is that first step of people. Like I know for me, we were technically not to be a Wesley Foundation, the way that Oklahoma City University, like we didn't have a true traditional Wesley Foundation, but we had a fellowship. It was through the fellowship that I discerned my call to ministry, and having people there that came and supported me through that, what that looked like. And even as I was thinking about seminary, like just having a space to be able to bounce that off of was amazing, and a great group of people. I took my first mission trip through the Wesley Foundation, and just grateful
Wow.
for the ministry that they do, and try to support it in any way that I can, no matter where I'm at.
Awesome. Yeah, I think if you dig deeply into any person who's doing some creative ministry, they've either come to ministry through campus ministry or they've served in leadership in campus ministry. It's such an important piece of our connection that we don't support enough, honestly. So yeah, that's part of my commitment.
Right. It's tough. It's tough. I'm curious, Bishop. Knowing a little bit of your background and you sharing that you're a lifelong Methodist. Matt and I aren't. And I don't want to speak for him. But we have similar stories, and we came to the Methodist Church, through high school and that kind of time in our life. And so I know when I found the Methodist Church, the idea of bishops and district superintendents and the book of discipline and all of the things were so foreign to me. But I have clearly found a great appreciation for them. And knowing that you just have a lot on your plate, I'm curious, where are you finding joy in these moments?
That is an excellent question. As we began, we were talking about, the time that we're taking off this summer. I I find joy in my morning routine, which includes some time of gratitude and preparation for the day, and some stretching or even exercise. If I have time to do like some extensive exercise in the morning, if I don't, I try to do it later in the day. But just it's pretty extended time. Like I like to have about 2 hours. So if that works, it really sets my day off in a pace where I feel grounded and can let joy flow through better. And that takes a lot of organization because, as I'm sure you know, there are always pressures to take that early morning meeting or fit something in before the day really starts. And so I do actually have a commitment as I begin this second year in Mountain Sky to protect that time a little bit better.
Mm.
And I did just take some time out of the office and read like 4 books. So reading for pleasure is just fiction reading, is a joy. And exercising, running, biking, swimming if it's warm enough. The Episcopal residence is a block and a half from a neighborhood pool. So that's really lovely to just be able to walk down and swim some laps and just be with people. I'm lucky too that where the Mountain Sky Conference just purchased a new Episcopal residence that's closer to the airport. And this neighborhood is really community oriented. We have like the houses are set up kind of around a courtyard. And so every month one of our neighbors organizes up a kind of a potluck. And it's great to be in a space where people don't really understand what I do. Like I share I share with them, well, I'm a bishop, and they by and large, it's just not a group that goes to church, and so they don't really have any place to hang that title. It's just like any other title of any group, any, people who are sitting around the circle, whether that be, teacher or director or like one person who was there this weekend is starting a new job over at the naval base that's close to here, and it's just so diverse. So I get joy from that, and I also just get joy from my work. I mean, quite honestly, I love what I get to do, and I'm super grateful for it, and the capacity to dream and then to actualize, what the vision that's being received could look like
Mhm.
is a great joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah. How about you?
I love that. And I mean, we experience that as pastors, right? We
Mm.
go into places and people are like, oh, you're a pastor? Okay, well, we're gonna go over here. But to be able to find that community who's like, sure, whatever, come hang out, is incredible.
Yeah.
It's super incredible, and I appreciate all of that. I'm with you. I find joy in uh, many of those things, but just being being me, right? Like getting to go and run and I talk about this a lot in all of my life, but a lot on the podcast. Living in Bozeman's incredible.
Mm.
We love being outside. We love going and kayaking and hiking and doing the things and don't get to do it near enough, but and skiing and snowboarding and just being outside. And getting riding the chairlift with people that don't care that I'm a pastor and like, that's great, but let's talk about the mountain today.
Yeah.
Stuff like that brings me so much joy. And yeah, just being able to do it and to be a part of it and to be a part of a community in life is pretty cool. With pastor not always having to mean what the folks we work with and minister to and care for need it to mean.
Yeah. Yeah. And then at the same time, it often piques people's interest.
Right.
Like, wow, I never really thought that, real people were connected to that word church, or
Right.
certainly didn't think they looked like you, or,
Yes. Yep.
didn't think they would be gay, or
Mhm.
whatever it is, whatever their stereotype is that I'm blowing up, or
Mhm.
that you may be blowing up, or you may be
Yep.
blowing up at when you're talking to people and they discover this, they're talking to a pastor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting on Monday. So I literally got called in last minute to ref in a national soccer tournament on Monday. And
Wow.
I walked up to check in, and the guy that was checking in is a guy I've developed a relationship over the last year. He knows I'm a pastor, and he yells, "Pastor Franks is here! Everybody be ready!" And I was just like, okay, like I just was a little weirded out by it because like I just like it just was different, not to just ever be in that space where literally usually the conversation just small talk, but just when you're with your crew you get to know them and you just develop relationships with these people, and like to be recognized like kind of threw me for a little bit because I was like, hey, I'm just coming in to fill in to do this job in this place that I really did not feel like I belonged because I'm just starting out. I've been doing it a year, but apparently I'm fairly decent at it. But I have found joy in that space of my
Mm.
joke is, and the SPRC and I talked about this last night, that the reason why I love refing is because it is the one time I actually can judge people, and my authority is the authority regardless of how people feel about it. And I just sat there as this guy had said that, and I was like, wow, like that's probably pretty true. It feels my competitiveness because was an athlete most of my life before my body said no, and have found a really cool community of people who are mostly unchurched that were hurt by the church, and like I want to help them see that, hey, we love you and we care for you and we want to help you through your grief and your pain, but I'm not here to judge you, where you're at on Sunday morning. I'm here to be with you. And it's been fun to experience that. Even when I've done a game on Sunday evening, if I've had time on Sunday evening to just plop in and do a game, they're like, shouldn't you be doing something? Like, I did, and it's done. And you can find us online at Castle Rock First United Methodist Church. Like, I
Yes.
definitely know how to sales pitch it, but I like a lot, like both of you have shared. I like to just be in that space without having to be the pastor, to be on. There is
Mm.
something really cool about that. And in this last year, finding joy, I never would have thought it would bring me as much joy as refing does, but getting to get back into it again on Monday was like, oh wow, like, I forgot how much I really do love doing this.
Mm.
uh so
Beautiful. Yes. Mm.
so Bishop, you shared something with me and it struck a chord with me. You talked about how uh the opportunity to be ordained, and that it didn't happen, and that if that opportunity would have been, it would have, she went the route of the deaconess. And I
Yeah.
couldn't help but think of my mom, that if my mother would have had strong United Methodist women clergy people in her life, she would have been a clergy person without a doubt.
Mm. Mm.
And because of some of the pain within the church that caused her when she had gotten a divorce before she met my dad, and literally was shunned out of her little Methodist church in Eastern Oklahoma.
Mm.
Um, and so there was part of the reason why we didn't go to a church was because of that pain.
Mm.
But one of the things I loved about my mom, and it literally took me almost becoming ordained before I really realized this, that my mom uh, reared me to be a United Methodist before I was a United Methodist. And I think that's the most United Methodist thing ever with Prevenient Grace.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
um, and so like one of the things that I have been trying to process, especially over these last few years of like with the church harm that has been done in a lot of different spaces, how do you kind of help bridge that space of being with those that have been harmed, but then also trying to hold the institutional, what it is?
Mm.
And that's, I know that's changed. I mean, we do have the change, but I also feel like that we still have to do some reconciliation work.
Yeah.
um and
Yeah.
I just, how's that work out for, like, how do you see that play out, or how have you seen that play out?
Yeah. I mean, that there's so much in that question. And I am the first gay bishop to be elected w- when it was allowed, when after the rules had changed. So my election was different from Bishop Cedric Bridgeforth or Bishop Karen Olavito, where those elections were in technically in violation of the Book of Discipline, and so there were immediate strategies before and after to address any complaint that might come. There was no needed strategy in my election. That I was a candidate among many candidates, and being gay is an aspect of my identity. But that doesn't erase the reality that I went to seminary in 92, 90 to 95 at Garrett, one of our United Methodist seminaries, and was ordained in Kansas East. And even in seminary, there were seminary professors who said to me, "You have no business considering being ordained." Um, Even though I knew I was called, I had no question, no doubt that I was called, and had a real wrestling with God of how could you call me and call me into a denomination that doesn't allow me to be who I am. And this feels like a setup. And it was for me, a process of trusting God and really becoming quite clear that the call is from God, and it comes through an institution, but the institution is created by humans, as a call from God, inspired by the Holy Spirit, but ultimately being mediated in the world through humans who are fallible. And so so I always understood my call as, number one, coming from God, and number two, coming through an institution that was always itself going on to perfection, that was not perfected yet, but that part of my work was to help it be more fully who God was calling it to be. So when I was ordained in Kansas East at that time, in the 90s, the mid to late 90s, the Board of Ordained Ministry still made candidates and respond formally to whether we were chargeable on the chargeable offenses in the discipline.
Mm-hmm.
So both in our written materials and then in our oral examination by the full board. And so with respect to the chargeable offense of being a self-avowed practicing homosexual, which is just such ridiculously stupid language.
Right.
I refused to answer it. I said, this is an unjust question. I don't recognize its validity. And I don't expect everyone will agree with me here on the board of ordained ministry, but I do expect that you will want pastors and ordained ministers who will stand for their own conscience and conviction as to what we understand God's vision and hope and justice lived out in the world to be. So they did ordain me, but even having to do that is a kind of all of the people on the board of ordained ministry said, "Oh, thank you for your courage, thank you for your honesty," and assumed that I wouldn't have done that if I weren't gay.
Mm-hmm.
And my position was, any justice-oriented pastor, straight or gay, should be making this same stand.
Right.
So it shouldn't be a de facto coming out to make this stand, but that's
Mm-hmm.
how it was received. And and having to do that and not having the solidarity of others who said they were reconciling, but coming through the process and didn't make that kind of stand is a kind of harm.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were other harms for me in my ministry. I was in campus ministry, we were just talking about that. I was in campus ministry for 14 years, and many wonderful things were accomplished in that. And there were several moments when I was ready to return to a local church. I didn't expect to be in campus ministry for 14 years. But in conversation with this district superintendent, the response was, well, there are only so many reconciling churches and none of them are open. And my response was, well, let's make another one. But there was not a willingness to do that. So there was another sort of sense of closedness. And even though I'm ordained, like you were saying, Matt, like that kind of the low level rejection, because I was still serving and being fruitful and thriving, was its own kind of unique harm. And I think that that's the reality of the moment that we're in, is that yes, now we have a discipline that supports the ordination of LGBTQ persons. And over the last 50 years, many, many, many LGBTQ persons and our families and allies experienced harm from that. And so as we try to engage in repentance as a denomination around that, we need to do it corporately and to name that a whole class of people and generations of people have been harmed. And we need to do it uniquely and individually, because every single person has a story.
Mm-hmm.
I am a bishop now, which is an amazing grace of God. Um, and there is a kind of redemption and healing in that, both personally and corporately. And I know that's true, when we think of the election of Karen Olivito and Bishop Cedric Bridgeforth, there is a kind of corporate healing and redemption that happens in the symbolism of that.
Mhm.
But we're also unique individuals with unique stories, that have both, joy and also harm that's been mediated through the institution. So the hundreds and hundreds of people who have that as well, we need to repent individually too. So as a bishop, to your question, Matt, we have this role of being responsible for, holding the institution and being the body that seeks the unity of the church, and the quote garter of the faith through, as we articulate it through the doctrine and polity in our discipline. And that has been also a purveyor of harm. So it's this dual role of having the authority to offer, apology and, ask for forgiveness, and also being a person who needs to and desires to receive that, and so, hopefully now, as a bishop in a position of being able to offer that, it's informed in a unique way, and hopefully in a very authentic, and caring way. But it doesn't mean that only I should be offering that. And then there's the whole corporate work. So maybe that's a long answer to, but it is so layered. And
Right.
we are in this moment where we're trying to both celebrate that we've
Mhm.
achieved this milestone of love and compassion and justice and inclusion, and and not say that we're done,
Mhm.
and also not say that just the change of those rules covers all the harm of the last 50 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and really what got me there was thinking about, and it was because I came across, and I really wish I could find it again. I came across an article about Methodists and the Cherokees as a Cherokee Nation
Mhm.
citizen, and it was
Yeah.
very Wesley was not kind to them,
Mm.
and I think one of the things um I have appreciated in this annual conference is the work attempting to be done with the indigenous community in our annual conference. I definitely have to think that it's at least there's conversation and verbiage and like even some attempts. I mean, we're even talking about here how we're going to be involved with what would it look like for us to be involved with the Sand Creek Run and what's that going to look like. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Whereas like in Oklahoma, the diversity of having we literally, you had the Oklahoma Annual Conference and you had the Indian Missionary Conference, and there was no dialogue or conversation about how we could work together. It just seemed like we were always working apart. And then even when I was in seminary, when the board ordained ministry would do their recruitment in the seminary, literally had some clergy say, "Why don't you just go to the Oklahoma Indian Missionary Conference?"
Um,
And I feel like you have done a really good job of helping trying to at least keep that at the forefront. Like these conversations need to happen, and the work that's being done with that. And we have a lot of work that needs to be done. I loved how you talked about how we're moving towards perfection, that we're not perfected. Like I really
Mhm.
wish people would hear that more, because usually when they hear Christian, they assume we have this pious, like we're perfect, and like a good Methodist is going to recognize that we're not, and we're like we've got some work to do. That's what to me, that's what a good Methodist does, is we recognize that, like, and I know like even in my daily life, there is still a lot of work I need to be doing on myself and to make this world a better place. And I loved how you acknowledge that in that space, and then also have, especially in regards to the indigenous community of the Mountain Sky, are willing to even do that work too. And then there are other places as well, but like just that work alone is really what's going to strengthen us as the body of Christ. And
So true. So true. I mean, that is one of the blessings and responsibility of being the Episcopal leader of Mountain Sky, because we are the spiritual descendants of those who perpetrated the Sand Creek massacre. And so that happened in 1864. And it was only in 2012 when the United Methodist Church took a formal kind of responsibility. So when we think about all of those years before there was a formal responsibility taken, it's not going to be corrected quickly because there was a long time when we weren't even touching that responsibility. But now I do think that there is this kind of momentum that's happening, and I appreciate your saying that because it was just the Bishop of Mountain Sky, and then it's now the general agencies are very engaged, and the especially the General Commission on Archives and History. And they're doing a whole video series of education that's about to come out, which is really great. And General Secretary Ashley Bogan has been uh, really leading a kind of approach that brings history um, in a very honest, forthright way, but accessibly so that we can figure out what we do with that today. And at the same time, the Sand Creek work um, is led by the Bishop of Mountain Sky, but the Council of Bishops has also named and asked Bishop David Wilson, who is the first indigenous Episcopal leader and also the Episcopal leader in Great Plains, which is our adjacent conference to the east, to be a part of that. And then in just informal conversation, Bishop Laura Merrill, who's now the Episcopal leader in Oklahoma and the Oklahoma Indian Mission Conference, really wants to be a part of this work as well. And so it's an embracing of the collaborative work and an attempt, I hope, to break down some of the unnecessary divisions that you were talking about, like why don't you go there and not here instead of recognizing like we're called where we're called
Yeah.
and we carry the identities we have with us to the place where we are called, and we want to support all of that. And so yeah, I am looking forward to the Sand Creek Run this year, and because Otto Braided Hair, who is one of the descendants who we work with, asked me to be a part of the run and also made a specific ask that more Methodists come and support the run. So the main things that are needed are finances and but also logistics, because the meals that happen at the end of each day take a lot of work and a lot of preparation and then a lot of cleanup because they're usually there are a handful of Methodists, but there are a lot of runners. And then last year, the descendants of the Imachi internment camp also ran, recognizing that's a Japanese internment camp that's in our conference. That was part of the internment of Japanese Americans in World War II. And those descendants recognized that they had common cause and common hope with the descendants of the Sand Creek massacre. So they ran too. And it was really a beautiful way to think about the intersectionality of both identities and experiences, but also our hope as healed humanity.
Mhm. Bishop, I love that you named holding on to the tension between hope and the grief and harm that we have experienced over time. And that just because we've moved forward a couple of steps doesn't erase all of the other things. There's still tons and tons of work to do. Um, and I think we forget that sometimes. I think we get really excited about the change, and forget the other part. And we do. I think that's who we're called to be as the church, is to hold that tension between the celebration and the hope of life and the grief and harm that has happened. And how do we, because if we don't, we can't bring hope into those spaces, right? Um,
Right.
we just kind of get lost in the way of, well, everything's great. Everything's not great. We have
Mhm.
work to do. And so I appreciate you naming that.
Yeah, we do need to celebrate.
Yeah.
There was a lot that was done to organize ourselves and so many different campaigns. And
Mhm.
I'm actually preaching at the Reconciling Ministries Network convocation this weekend. The title of the convocation this year is Uncharted,
Mhm.
and I'm excited about that. Sort of both naming that celebration, but also, in the words of Martin Luther King, where do we go from here?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Could you talk to us a little bit about, and I hope this doesn't put you on the spot too much.
Yeah.
You've been here a year in the mountain sky. What what are your hopes and dreams? Kind of where do you see us going from here?
Yeah. Well, we we have the first piece of work when you come into any new appointment, whether it's a church appointment or extension ministry, is to listen and to understand. Listen for what God is saying, understand the context, understand what are the needs, what are the hopes, what are the dreams. And so in my first year, that was the initial piece of work. And what emerged was a clarity around the embrace and the pride that we have in the Mountain Sky Conference about our geography, that our geography is stunning, is gorgeous, whether we're talking about the mountains, which are often, in pictures that show stunning landscapes, but also the plains. I'm a child of the plains, and the plains have their own beauty and the whisper that comes through the wheat when you really listen as the wind blows. All of our geography is really tremendously gorgeous and is also tied in people's imaginations to spirituality.
Hmm.
And so what I articulated at annual conference and through several communications is a theme approach to ministry in Mountain Sky called spiritual geography that that names our geography as a resource and a grounding for our identity, and reminds us that whatever God is calling us to do to respond to people's needs, whether those be spiritual needs, physical needs, emotional needs, all of what we need to respond to those needs is here.
Hmm.
That we're not living in scarcity, we are living in abundance. And we often think about resources as like cash resources or very hard property resources. But we have amazing resources just in our geography, in our land, in our relationship, in our history, in the way that people of this geography have always been resilient people, whether we're talking about indigenous people or whether we're talking about European Americans who came to this place. There is a resilience and a creativity that's required if you're going to survive here.
Yep. Yep.
So, underneath the umbrella of spiritual geography, we've launched a pilot program that is working with the geography to do ministry in a new way. We've made an appointment. A person who had a background in doing spiritual treks, and are seeing if we can make a less than full-time appointment a full-time appointment by adding an approach that invites people into a spiritual trek, into a kind of pilgrimage. We know across the country, across the world, people are doing the pilgrimages. The number of people doing the Camino, the traditional Camino, but then there are other Caminos all over the world that people are seeking out and paying quite a bit of money to participate in. Because why are they doing this? Because human beings have innate spiritual needs, and they're not connected to churches, or they're not connected to religious community, and yet they feel this need. And so the marketplace is saying, oh, hey, you can pay all of this money and have a spiritual experience on a Camino. Well, we have the same geography here. And so we have an even more amazing geography, in my opinion, than what you're going to find in some caminos that are out there in the world. And so could we respond to this yearning with our own invitation to come to Mountain Sky, go on a trek, go on a pilgrimage, in a way that supports a piece of ministry in conjunction with a local church, but isn't a requirement to be a part of the local church to go on a trek. And then you go on this trek, led by an ordained United Methodist minister who's framing the experience in a way that someone can do when they've been theologically trained.
Mhm.
And then you reach the end of that and you're invited to take a next step. What would that look like? Maybe it's an emerging faith community online of people who want to stay connected, who had that experience together. Maybe it's an invitation to check out a United Methodist Church wherever you may be coming from. Maybe that place is in Delaware, or
Mhm.
maybe it's in Arizona. We don't know, but it's a specific invitation to take a next step. So the furthering of seeing what God is unfolding through our spiritual geography is part of what I think is next for Mountain Sky. And underneath the spiritual geography heading is also um, a, a, a taking responsibility of what it means to be on this land in the first place.
Mhm.
But that connects to what where Matt was leading us a few minutes ago. We aren't the European, the three, you and I, and part of Matt's heritage, which is both indigenous and European American. European American people are not the original inhabitants of this land, and we have a responsibility for that. And so the spiritual geography heading asks us to go deeper. Yes, Sand Creek is a piece of that, but we have 11 reservations within the bounds of our annual conference. And so what's the responsibility for us when we look at all of the land we have and what the purpose of that land is going forward, and how we do repair, how we do mutual sharing, how we go forward. So there those are the several pieces underneath that spiritual geography heading. There is also, I think, the trend in the United Methodist Church over the last maybe 20-ish years, and then it has been, if a church isn't meeting certain metrics, we close it. And then we came through this period, that was a devastating period of disaffiliation, where a lot of churches left the denomination, not as many as were imagined initially. We lost about 20% of our churches, and in Mountain Sky, we lost about 10%. Um, so I think we are in a period now of moving away from those trends, where if a church, certainly we're out of the period of disaffiliation. But if a church is not meeting certain metrics, it is, for me, not the default that we close it.
Mhm.
My hope is that we don't close any churches in Mountain Sky while I'm here. In the last annual conference, we closed 4. Those were already on their own trajectory, that we couldn't turn around. And one was a situation where a rogue group was trying to move to take the church, and so we had
Mhm.
to take action there. But in moving forward from my first year, my hope is that in every church we can work on renewal journeys, or a connectional scaffolding, a connectional sistering, a connectional support, so that we're not closing any churches. We need every United Methodist church that we have to be a United Methodist church in the place where it exists. And communities need our witness, and communities need our approach. I was in Wyoming a couple of months ago, near the Nebraska border, a church that was wanting to leave the United Methodist denomination, and it was a great morning because I learned so much about what they were doing in the community. There was certainly no reason to close that church. And what they were doing was uniquely United Methodist. They were feeding the community. They were a big tent church, really theologically. There were some loud conservative voices that were trying to say, we're not like the United Methodist denomination, but what I saw when I got there was they're exactly like the United Methodist Church. They,
Right.
they have a real spectrum of theology in their church. They have very conservative voices, and they have some folks who are LGBTQ or LGBTQ folks in their family who for whom that is very much tied to how they want to do church and witness in the world, all in the same local church. That's very United Methodist. And I said that you need to be in this community. There's no other church in this community who's going to witness the way you're witnessing, who's going to reach out to the community, feed people the way you're doing it. And we love you and we bless you and we want to stay in connection with you. And I'm here as your bishop to express that support and care and love. And about 2 weeks after that visit, we got a letter from the church that said, we're no longer talking about leaving the United Methodist Church.
Yeah.
So I think it just takes that as just sort of that encouragement, and our structure. That is one of the beauties of our denomination, is that we are connectional. And so we can bring both that relational support, but also we can remind each other of our history.
Mhm.
Our churches, by and large, are decades, if not over a century old. And people who have been part of these churches have gone through different periods of history and yet found a way to continue as church together. So right now in our country, we're pretty polarized, and that comes into our churches. We won't always be polarized. This moment will pass. What will come from it, we don't know exactly. I mean, what we're seeing from Gen Z is that they're a generation that really is rejecting extremes and also interested in embracing some more traditional forms. So it suggests to us that this coming generation will help us get out of this polarization. So we can't let this moment where it feels like things are this way or that way um, reify this moment in history. It's a moment.
Mhm.
It's a moment. And the truth is, my truth is, us versus them, and us versus them mentality is a distortion of reality. We really are all one, and there may be some manifestations of distinction, but we all have one beating heart. We are a body that is one, and it's our job to manifest that unity, and not a unity at the expense of love and justice and compassion, but a unity that includes that. That's true unity.
Ah, I love that. I hope you never have to open up my file. But if you do, I hope I hope the front page is just a big sticky note that says Zach loves rural church,
Um,
and Montana rural churches. Because I do. I mean, that was my first appointment up here 9 years ago, was up in northern Montana with three churches. And it saved my ministry. It saved a lot of things in my life, but some of the most fun I've had truly in the middle of nowhere with people just gathering, just like you said, big tent, they're all over the place, whether it was 60 people in my big church or 15 people in my small rural church, right? Doing incredible things. And it gives me so much hope because those are vital,
yeah,
right? Like a town of 150 people where we were the only church. There was a bar, there was a co-op, and a post office. No
yeah,
gas station, no grocery store, no school, nothing else. You know, church, post office, co-op,
yeah.
bar. And that community needs that space.
Yeah.
And it taught me as a pastor and just as a person, this is vital. This is so we need this and we can't walk away from it. And just ignited my passion for this conference and talking about the geography. We should be proud of that,
Yeah.
about how far we stretch, about how connectional we are, and about what we have to offer each other, and not a top-down model, but across the board of here's what's working, here's how we're meeting our people where they are, whether it's in the church building or the bar or the co-op or the next town over, because that wherever it is, it's huge. And so I'll stay on that soapbox all day long,
Yeah,
because I
well,
love it.
and that's why we launched the Montana Plan.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, the Montana Plan is created to support our rural churches, to recognize the uniqueness of Montana. So we have about 310, 311 United Methodist churches in Mountain Sky. Over 90 are in Montana. So that's about 30%. We're 4 states, but 30% in one of our states. And many of those are very small churches. Some of them worship with 7 people. Some of them worship with 10 people. And that small of a church is not going to be able to support a full-time elder ordained pastor. And yet there's deep faithfulness
Mhm.
in the church. And like you said, the community needs that space of church, and people need that space, a place of peace, a place of purpose, a place of connection, a neutral space sometimes to gather as community. It all matters tremendously. And we don't want to see any of those churches go away. And so the Montana Plan it was created to reach back into our history as United Methodist movement, of the circuit rider model, of recognizing that, there was also a time when small churches couldn't support a local stationed full-time elder. And so the circuit riders moved around and offered the sacrament. And in the meantime, the other resources and other leadership in the place kept the church going and led and grew the church. And there are a number of churches in Montana that are being led by lay folks who we want to bring more connection and support to. They're amazingly faithful people who stepped up and said, I'll lead, but didn't have the benefit of a lot of training, or even an experience to know that they could be connected with other leaders in their area or in the state or in the conference. And so we said, hey, let's pick up this piece of our history and let's respond to these needs. And we looked at the state and organized 8 circuits, each with its own circuit rider, who is either an elder or a very seasoned licensed local pastor. And so you, Zach, are one of our new circuit riders. Yeah, and so thank you for saying yes.
Yes, that all felt very shameless. Thank you. Yeah. No, of
And
course.
yeah, and thank you to your church, because part of initiating this was a conversation with each of the 8 pastors who we'd identified to be a circuit rider, and each of the staff parish relations committee of each church, to say, will you release your pastor to do some of this broader work? And fortunately, the pastors were excited, and the SPRC people, there were some questions in some cases of like, how does this work and how does this work? But by and large, they got the big vision that this is who we are, that we're connectional people, we support each other. We need structure, actually, to out of which to do ministry. When the structure is tight and strong, the ministry flows and it supports underneath. And if it's tight and strong, it's almost invisible. But we do have to initiate it.
Yeah.
And so that's what we've done. And I am really excited about this getting going. And you know, what are the hopes of this? Well, one hope is that people will move, if there's any sense of isolation, they'll move from a sense of isolation to a sense of connection. Because one of the expectations is that each circuit, organized by the circuit rider, will have two gatherings a year,
Mhm.
one being a missional related gathering and one being some kind of training or learning together. It could be both missional and training both times. And but each time people are coming together, if you know they're Methodists, so there'll probably be some food. And
Always.
so that the social relationships happen just by gathering. And we're less inclined these days to make the effort to gather in
Mhm.
person because it is easier to connect on Zoom. But I heard the statistic that on Zoom you only receive 30% of the communication that you're getting from another person. Yeah, and only 30% of the nuance of what's being shared.
Mhm.
So this is a great tool. We definitely need it in Mountain
Mhm.
Sky to have Zoom and to have other forms of connecting online. But we have to be intentional about not losing that physical gathering. And then the another piece of the Montana plan is that the circuit rider will provide monthly to the circuit churches a video sermon. Now, that doesn't have to be a video sermon, but that's where we're going to see if we can start
Mhm.
with the hope of releasing the pastor of that church to do work in the community. This is a model that we're already using. One of the Denver churches is in relationship with a church on the Western Slope, where that church actually gets every Sunday their video sermon from the
Mhm.
church in Denver. And that church is growing like crazy because the pastor is using the 10 hours that would have been taken to prepare the sermon and get ready for that piece of worship to be out in the community.
Mhm.
And it's working. So we'll see. It might be, some churches like to do a video or not a video, a sermon series.
Mhm.
So it might be that the video sermon isn't useful in some churches that are used to that kind of a. So then maybe there's some other kind of offering that the circuit rider gives that can release. Like that's the whole idea is how can we collaborate and cooperate so that more time is released from the pastor or the lay leaders of the church to be out in the community.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. I mean, you touched on it deeply in your visit to the church in Wyoming. How and when and where we show up matters.
Yeah.
It matters in our connection, and it matters to our local congregations. It matters to our circuits. It matters to all of it. And showing up matters, right? And
There's
yeah,
there's a huge difference between even if you only go once in 2 years, there's a huge difference between once and never.
and none. Yeah.
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 And that's what excites me about it is I, I have no I get this a lot from people of, well, you just want to come in and take over because you're Bozeman and I have no interest in that. I don't have time for that. I already have a church.
Right.
I don't need yours. But what I want to do is come in and help. I want to be supportive and hear who you are, learn who you are, hear your stories. And how do we do that together? How do we take this really big, diverse geographical area through the valley here and do some cool things together that don't revolve around Bozeman, right? And because you all are having to come here for doctors and grocery and all the other things. Let's do some fun stuff.
Yeah.
And I I don't know. I think like 95% of our job as pastors is showing up in the ways that we do. And I'd much rather do that than sit in my office all day. So
Yes. At Circuit Rider.
yeah. Yeah. And selfishly, having served my first appointment at a 3-point charge where I was the only Methodist pastor in 2 counties,
Mm.
and all of those churches being Brother Van churches, and and things like that. I have a deep pride for that, and I'd always heard about circuit riders, but never been in a place that embraced and actually knew who their circuit rider was.
Okay.
And I had church members who um, let me borrow. They did not give it to me because they very clearly asked for it back. But the Brother Van book about his life and how he got here and did the things that had her mom and grandmother's notes in it
Oh, wow.
of, yeah, this happened. Brother Van stayed with us on these dates, and this is a good story, but it happened this way. It was
Oh, that's amazing.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
And she let me borrow that, within the first couple of months, and just handed it to me and said, "You need to know this."
Yeah.
And deeply connected us to that history and made us, serving those three churches who were historically Brother Van churches. I felt like a little circuit rider driving every Sunday morning, and knew that could see the writing on the wall, that was the direction we were going to have to go.
Yeah.
Um, to make sure that our churches and communities continue to have that vital United Methodist grace-filled presence. That's what we're going to have to do.
Yeah.
So I'm pumped to see it happening, whether I'm involved in it or not. It didn't matter. I'm just pumped it's happening, and we're living and leaning into it because it's huge.
Amen.
And that's where
Amen.
knowing our history is important. Like
Yes.
it's crazy how many churches I've served in my time that didn't know their history, didn't know their story,
Mhm.
didn't know like how they came about. And so in this congregation, we last year we celebrated 150 years and of being a ministry presence in Castle Rock. And we spent a whole year celebrating it, like in different avenues, different ways of doing it. We didn't just do like the one weekend thing. Like literally, it was a year long thing that was so fun. And it lived in one of the things that we were clear about it is we wanted to live into it. We wanted to show the community all the aspects of who we are. And it started with us starting 150 years ago. And what's really crazy is even though we are not a Father Dyer church, he's actually buried in Castle Rock.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. And
Wow.
so it led to some I spent the last year just really looking at all this history that it's just so cool, and it helped us be able to discern our willingness to be it's hard for me not to say welcome to Castle Rock First United Methodist Church, where our mission is to share God's love and light with our community and beyond. And to be able to say we practice that by and we are able to do that because of those who've gone before
Mhm.
us.
Yeah.
And I love this idea of the Montana plan with that because it does lean into what we really should be. We should be truly connectional. And that doesn't mean that like, hey, we have the one big church, they do all the things. And when I first got to Colorado and was first getting boots, just getting used to the area, finding out which Methodist churches are in the area, one of the things I first did was like, hey guys, like we're going to do Pride together,
Mm.
and the two bigger churches in our county said no, they were going to have their own booths, and I was like, that's fine. I just want you to know you're always welcome to be part of our multi-church booth. And so the first year we were able to get Parker to come be a part of us, and then even Elizabeth, even though they're in Elbert County, I still feel like they're Douglas County. They're old school Douglas County because Douglas County used to go all the way to the border.
Right.
And so, we brought them along. And what was really great was that encouraged the other denominations to reach out to churches in their county so like the
Yeah.
next year we went from just being 7 churches to 12. And then
Wow.
and then last year, because of where Douglas County Pride fell, it fell on most of the back to school day events, and so those large churches like St. Andrews and St. Luke's and Parker weren't able to really be there, but they were able to send people and stuff to be a part of our larger church booth, and it just created this really great space. And we did that together as United Methodists, and so it has spurred some at least some conversation and dialogue with all of us in Douglas County to what would it look like for us to actually do some things together. And so we're slowly kind of doing that just on the sense of I'm not lying. I am a very connectional guy, and I want us to work together. I don't like the fact that we have all these churches and they've refused to work together. It is something that has bugged me since I've been United Methodist Youth Director, and I want us to work together because I feel that if we work together, we're only going to be stronger. And it's
Yeah.
only going to strengthen our churches, not take away. They're not the people at St. Andrews aren't going to come to Castle Rock because they like me. They're going to stay. They'll stay in their little 470 corridor, and vice versa. And we have to have this confidence that I really believe that the church was at its strongest when it was working together, lay led.
Mm.
And if you look at I mean, we want to get statistical. We were at our strongest when we had circuit riders. We didn't have I call it the caged pastor. We don't have the caged pastor stuck in the office with really no way of building relationships. We need to free the pastor to go out and build relationships in the community. Zach and I do that very well. In every community that we have ever served, people know us outside the walls of the church, and that's how it really should be. And then to equip our laity to go say, hey, yes, go do this. And
Yeah.
it's been fun. Uh, uh, for me, it's been fun because I literally have said, we're going to do things. You're going to do things. And I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader and fan. And you just tell me what you need from me. And when we can release that, and it's not that power struggle, Zach kind of shared a little bit about that. But if we can release that and say, hey, no, we're in this together. We are trying to build the kingdom of God together. Oh my gosh, it gets people going. And I think that's been the renewal here, is that just leaning into our history, but then like that commitment that we're all a part of this together.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. That is so true.
It's fun. Well, Bishop, we want to be a good steward of your
Yes.
time and energy. Thank you. Do you have anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, no, I am so grateful to get to be in conversation with you both. Honored to be a part of the Bearded Theologians experience.
It is an experience.
Yes, it is.
And I will look forward to more conversation because the things we've talked about are in process. Our annual conference theme was Beloved Belong, Becoming. So all of these things are becoming. And even the Montana plan, like we have some clear beginning metrics around what the reality is now, and also a survey to try to identify people's sense of things now. And in a year, we'll assess, have we moved the needle in these key ways? So I'd love to come back and share with you those outcomes. We all do need to be about outcomes. What is it? God's taking us somewhere.
Mhm.
And we need to what we measure grows, and what we pay attention to flourishes, because we're giving it the benefit and the blessing of our attention. So I would love to return. And of course, I'll continue to see you guys and cheer you
Yes.
on.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you.
you are definitely more than welcome to just let
Yeah.
us know when you want to come back.
Open
It's
invitation.
an open invitation.
Well, Bishop,
Um,
we do appreciate you being on. For the last 2 years or so, we've ended every episode with asking that wonderful old Wesley question of where do you see God at work
mm,
in your life? And you've touched on it quite a bit actually, but we would like to ask you the same question. Where do you see God at work?
yeah, I'll give you a very specific answer because I was in Utah yesterday at the Pine Cliff camp, the United Methodist camp, about an hour and a half to the east of Salt Lake City, at junior high and senior high camp. And God was moving through those youth, and the camp directors, and all of the legacy of the camps that we have, places where people can get away, and hear God. And that was the theme. That was the programmatic theme of listening for God. And and people were reflecting it just organically. Like I talked
Mm.
to a 10-year-old boy who I said, "What do you like about this place?" He said, I like it because it's quiet.
Ah.
Yeah. And so that's where I'm seeing God is in the way that people serve selflessly. Like there was a group of nomads, the retired folks under
Mhm.
the umbrella of UMCOR, who travel around and do service projects, who were repairing windows and screens. That's just selfless service that makes this beautiful spiritual home place sanctuary available to that group of youth who were there that this week, but also generations of people who have sought God and needed to go to a quiet place to be able to hear God. So
Yeah.
grateful for that.
I
Grateful
love
for
that.
all the influence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Matt. What about you?
Um, I we're getting ready to do a new thing. We're getting ready to merge our two services, our modern and our traditional service, into one beautiful thing. We've been toying with the idea for a couple of years, and we've done a couple of combined services and things, and we've been slow rolling it out. The official announcement hasn't been official yet, but a lot of people already know. But in the conversations I've been having, especially in this last week, of getting some logistical stuff done and all the things that are going into that, of it's just been really, those conversations have been amazing. And then I have been tapping back to the conversation we had at annual conference about the vineyard and how we have to take the
Yeah.
best of both things
Mhm.
to make a great vine. And I've been leaning into that. And I have found myself looking at my life in that way too. Like, where have I taken the best of things to make me better, and seeking those things out? And it's just been, that has been a true, like yesterday in our SPRC, that was just the great conversation of that. And
Yeah.
talking about how we recognize this isn't a sign of failure, it's a sign of true growth,
Yeah.
where we're taking the best of everything to make an amazing one thing. And I'm really excited about it. Um, um, it's one of those things that I'm also like super scared about it too, but I know God's at work at this, and God's doing a new thing here in Castle Rock, and I'm just here. I'm happy to be here for it. And it's been a while. It's been a long time in my ministry since I've been able to say something like that.
Oh, amen. I love that you're using the metaphor from annual conference of the rootstock and the vine.
And it
Lovely.
and honestly, it didn't hit me until one of our uh uh actually they were someone who was a delegate to annual conference had asked it in administrative council, like, this feels like a failure, like what, where, like, how is this not a failure? And then that light bulb went on of like, oh well, you were at annual conference, you heard the thing, and like it's actually helped us articulate some things that when you do this sometimes happens. And
Uh,
so it's helped ease a lot of the tension that is there. And so it's, I actually, I'm not gonna lie, this is probably the first time in a long time at an annual conference I actually did learn something. So
well, great. Well, thanks to Wesleyan Impact Partners too.
yes,
Lisa
yes.
Right.
Greenwood was the one who brought us that video and that metaphor. And yeah, I wonder, it makes me wonder if that video is on the website, because it would be useful for our local churches to be able to share that with the congregation members who weren't at annual conference.
Well,
So
I
Yeah.
was joking with one of my leaders just on Sunday. I was like, I need someone to find me a vineyard so I can go interview someone. And they're like, "Oh, you're just using this as an excuse to go have a glass of wine." And I said, "Well, there's perks to those
Also,
right.
conversations."
It
So
doesn't have to be an either or. Yes.
yes.
that's right.
So
Yeah.
Zach, what about you?
Beautiful.
Yeah, I did the really silly thing about 6 months ago and planned my summer sermon series to where I'm preaching through the book of Titus right now.
Oh, oh.
And past Zach thought it was a great idea, and then present Zach going through it's like, oh my gosh, it's a lot. But I did it. I've never preached through it. I've never really done a Bible study on it, and I'm finding folks in my church haven't either.
Mm,
And I think where I see, well, not think, I know where I see God's Spirit at work and moving through my congregation is folks being excited about reading something they've never read before and
mm,
digging into it and reading it before Sunday comes and coming to church with that anticipation of what is that going to do with this today? Because I have no idea.
mm.
Which is a ton of fun. It makes it, I always love preaching and always have fun doing it. But when you know people are coming with kind of that excitement and anticipation and their own little questions, it makes it preaching something that's kind of hard, a lot of fun. And just seeing folks who have been in the church either all their lives or just coming to it being excited about something that, yeah, maybe they heard about Titus, heard about this letter, but never really dug into it. Is pretty fun. And to see them do something with that, really, I don't know. We don't always see that, and so that's fun to see. It's exciting.
Good job. You're making me want to go into Titus. I'll check it out.
Good luck. It's a weird and fun letter.
Yes. Well, definitely, we're grateful for you, Bishop Stoneking, being with us today, and we hope that our listeners like and share this, and then also go to our website at beardedtheologians.com to look at all of our past content, and even pick up a couple items to use for back to school gifts, or if you've got that special pastor in your life who you feel like they need something, it would be a great gift for them to have. And so we're grateful for everybody today, Bishop being here, and then those are listening. And so for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
Guys, and like this video, and push that thumbs up.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on all social media outlets. You can check out old episodes and more information at beardedtheologians.com. Thanks for checking us out.